The news is going to the movies. On the must-watch list, The American Dream and Other Fairy Tales, produced by documentary filmmaker Abigail Disney. The 62-year-old filmmaker, activist, and Disney heiress. Her grandfather is Disney co-founder Roy O. Disney, and her beloved great-uncle is Walt Disney. In the film, Disney investigates allegations of worker exploitation within the theme parks that bear her family name. She discovered horror stories of workers unable to afford a home living in their cars in the Disneyland parking lot in Anaheim, California, and economic coercion of the city government to force perks benefiting the company, the one that gave us Mickey Mouse and many other beloved characters. Abigail Disney spoke with the news this week.
My grandfather had a whole philosophy about how nobody's too good to pick up a piece of garbage. And so he would always, as CEO, go in there and pick up a piece of garbage from the ground in a kind of way that everybody could see him do it. That shift has been so unfortunate in American life. We've kind of elevated CEOs to practically saint-like status, and we look upon the hourly workers as these lowly peons who deserve what they're getting. It's just such a contrast.
Yeah, my grandfather owned a roofing company, and we're the same age, you and I almost. And he used to say, "You put your name on something, and you put your word behind it, and that's what it's all about."
Yeah. My grandfather would have totally related to that. He was one of those sort of salt-of-the-earth, old-fashioned guys. I mean, his politics would horrify you,
right?
But he was actually a really good guy.
How did you begin to understand times had changed? How did you get the idea of doing this? I know you're a documentarian, and as a documentarian, as a reporter, I'm always looking for a story. So you're always looking for a story. Right. How did you pick this one?
Exactly. Well, somebody reached out to me. One of the workers at Disneyland sent me a Facebook message. I knew the problem. Somewhere in the back of my head, I knew it the way most Americans know all the bad things. And then you kind of have so much going on, you let yourself sort of not know the things you know. And so when somebody reached out to me directly and said, "This is really hard, and is there any way you can help us?" it was not possible to simply unknow it the way I had been all that time. I mean, I'm ashamed to admit that, but it's true. So I felt like I owed them the courtesy of going there and just being with them and listening to what they had to say. It was a year before I started the film that I went out there and visited with them. It was just me and my daughter and a bunch of union workers, and I took a lot of notes, and I wrote this long email to Bob Iger, which I'm sure made him roll his eyes practically out of his socket. It's not just the wages, it's just the level of indignity that it just comes with being the hourly worker. And it was really horrifying to me. I wrote him this long email. He gave me a very unsatisfying answer. And then I spontaneously answered a question on live television about his compensation. When that went viral and I saw how deep that nerve was that I hit, when I was sort of saying that, like, nobody's worth $66 million, especially not when people who he employs are at the food bank. And that hit such a nerve that I knew I had something there, and that's when we decided to make the film.
Mm-hmm. What did you discover? What are some of these indignities that you cover in the documentary?
We mainly focus on pay, although there's a lot more that we could talk about if we wanted to. Things like, they used to have an employee cafeteria where the food was free, but now they don't have a cafeteria, and then they pay for it. And it used to be they paid a discount, but now they pay full park prices for their food, which is insane because it's famous how bad those prices are. Gradually stripping away these dignities. We found that many of the employees can't afford their own health care plan. There's an education plan, but they can't make the time for it because they're just too busy working the hours. Lots of employees can't live close enough to the park to make it less than a 2-hour commute, so many of them sleep in their cars. Winnie the Pooh died. A woman who played Winnie the Pooh for 8 years, 6 days a week, died in her car a few years ago. And then we talk a little bit about the constant strong-arming of the Anaheim government for subsidies and tax breaks. And we use the prime example of a $100 million parking lot that Anaheim took on the bond to build, charges $1 a year to Disney for rent. At the end of the term, Disney will own it. after having taken no risk, borrowed no money, and paid $1 a year, and they get to charge whatever they want without taxes for the 10,000 parking space inside. That's an example of just, there is no justifying that on behalf of the citizens of Anaheim. If I lived in Anaheim, I'd be furious.
Some employees of Disney have to sleep in their cars.
Winnie the Pooh, she played Winnie the Pooh for 8 years, 6 days a week. And one morning she didn't show up for work. She was sleeping in her car, and she had died in her car. It crushed everybody. They were so brokenhearted about it. Lots of them sleep in their cars. And you'll see if you watch the film, there's a scene where I asked them, like, how many of you know somebody who's on food stamps? How many of you sleep in your cars? How many of you forego medical treatment? And all the hands go up to all those questions. It's horrible. The good news is that one of the unions, the hotel maids in Anaheim, have just negotiated contracts for $23.50. So that's huge. It's a sign that they're getting the message that they can't get away with this any longer. $22.50 is very close to being a living wage in Anaheim. So that's a big deal. And for some reason, there's no press about it. Nobody's talking about it. I don't think Disney wants the word to get out. Right. Because they have all these other contracts to negotiate. But when the employees raise their voices, when they stay together, when they work in the union, they can get results, and they should keep up the pressure.
Thanksgiving must be tough. You're costing a family so much money. So great. Thank you very much. Tell me about it. Disney heir and filmmaker Abigail Disney. In 2018, Disney CEO Bob Iger collected $65 million, or 1,424 times the median salary of a Disney employee.